Hey, look! A gorgeous, fantastic animated movie from overseas! That's released in less theaters than Norm of the North, because sometimes the Lego movie is just wrong! You'll remember Mamoru Hasoda as the director of Wolf Children, aka my favorite best animated film of 2013. This time he's returned with Boy and the Beast, and let's talk about it! After running away from an unhappy family situation, a boy named Ren, well, he's also called Kyuta in the movie, so I'm going to call him Kyuta Ren, stumbles into Japanese Zootopia and gets roped into becoming the apprentice of Kumatetsu, a powerful but stubborn and impulsive warrior nominated to become the next lord of Japanese Zootopia if he can beat the other nominee in a fight. At some point, the time frame for this fight is pretty vague. Now, there are 3 things you can expect from a Mamoru Hasoda film. That's not the Digimon movie, or they might be, I honestly haven't seen it. 1, its animation will be beautiful. His animation is much more fluid and natural than your average anime film, and his designs are a bit more realistic. He has an exquisite sense of natural beauty, and in this movie has significantly upped his ante on his CGI crowd shots. 2, the movie will have an interesting but underplayed fantasy element, from time travel to wolf-human hybrids to a computer virus gaining sentience. Sort of. The Hidden Beast world harkens back to many elements of classic Japanese mythology, with mentions of various types of gods and reincarnation, but also adding some dimension hopping and the classic anime use of physical manifestations of emotional turmoil. Man, life would be so much easier if you could just see who was feeling a little bit murdery that day. And 3, it has a very strong theme of family. However, this time it's presented a bit more complicated and introspective through the character of Kyuta Ren, who finds himself frequently conflicted and unsure about what he wants and where he belongs, as it follows his emotional state of being part of an unusual family, from anger to confusion to rejection to rebellion to attachment to learning who he is within his odd family and outside of it. In layman's terms, this is an angsty teenage boy movie about his daddy issues, but in a good way. Okay, I know how that sounds, but it's also true. This is very much a story about boys' relationships to their fathers, and actually approaches it in a way I think this movie belongs in the pantheon of other sentimental guy movies with Rudy and Field of Dreams. But it's also about, as said, different kinds of families in unusual situations, such as multiple parents and caretakers. And I especially appreciated what might have been a subtler message about being upfront with your children about certain things, even if it upsets them, rather than perpetually lying to them. Parents, take some notes! Then, of course, it being a story that portrays your personal growth through fighting, it has a lot of well-choreographed and even brutal fight scenes. None of this fancy cutting or visual exaggeration, just straight hand-to-hand and occasionally weapon realistic combat. I really enjoyed Kyuta Ren's training phase, where the film gets a little bit more low-key and real-time, like a slice-of-life episode, and then the ending of the film, in terms of pathos and catharsis, is pretty much perfect in every way. That all being said, I do have to confess this is not my favorite Mamoru Hasoda film. For one, the film is basically split into 2 parts, and I generally preferred the first half to the second, if only because I feel it had slightly better pacing and actually seemed to be building to something and then drastically changed on a dime. This isn't to say that the second half of the film is bad, because what happens is very much still important to the overall film's theme. It was just very abrupt. Secondly, because this story is ultimately about the emotional journey and the relationships of Kyuta Ren from his perspective specifically, we see far more of him than anyone else. Ergo, Kumatetsu is in the movie a lot less than I thought he would be, and for a movie about their relationship, a fair amount of it is assumed rather than shown. Or maybe it's just playing it off extremely subtly, and do you need everything spelled out for you, cell specs? And fine. And lastly, maybe it's a bit presumptuous to label this a guy movie in the same way it would be to presume any movie was only capable of being enjoyed by one gender. All I'm saying is that this is a story about the emotional familial connection between 2 ultra-masculine characters who, in the tradition of real men do not show affection or vulnerability, express themselves through angry men yelling and punching each other. Being a social practice I have absolutely no experience with, may contribute to why I wasn't able to connect to this movie in the same way I've connected to Hasoda's other works, which isn't to say that I didn't still like it. This is a great, beautiful, potentially touching film, depending on who you are, that I encourage to everyone who can find one playing nearby, just as long as you know you're going to get a lot of angry guy yelling. So, Animaniacs, have you seen Boy and the Beast, and what did you think about it? Comment, like, subscribe, etc., and you stay incredibly shiny, Animaniacs!